Four nations competing for one trophy in a 7-game-long tournament. Guys, no NHL All-Star game this year, but instead we have the Four Nations Face-Off tournament featuring Canada, USA, Sweden, and Finland. I'm super excited, and we wanted to give you guys some content while PuckTime, as far as NHL version, is on hold. So happy to be here. Happy to have Carmine Bianco here with me on WagerTalk TV, as always. We're going to look at some futures. We're going to look at some prop futures for the entire tournament. And, of course, we'll talk about the opening game with Canada taking on Sweden. Carm, you saw me getting into it online with Prez. And, there's some people out there that aren't really fans of this tournament. For someone like me that's such a diehard hockey fan, and I just love these international competitions, I don't understand how anybody could not like this competition. And one thing that's been bothering me, and I had to get off my chest, is that I don't get how anybody can be saying these players will not take this serious. I don't understand where anybody can get that opinion from, how that could even be said, when these players, whether you're putting on the Finnish jersey, the Swedish jersey, Canadian or American, you're representing your country. And I really do think it means a lot to all of these players, especially for some of these players where it's their first time ever representing their country. You think back to Austin Matthews, the last time he was involved in an international competition, it was for Team North America, when he played on the same team as McDavid and McKinnon. Some of these guys have never even represented their country at a large scale. So I'm excited for the tournament. How about you?
No, listen, I went into it, I've been talking the last couple of weeks about, I think it's an ill-timed tournament because it's a one-off. And I think about other sports as well, too. I just don't want to see anybody get injured. If they go through 7 games and not a single player in this tournament gets injured or suffers any type of injury that hurts his NHL team that are paying them long term, then it's a success. I think that's all that really matters. Each team is the most games any one of the teams is going to play is 4, and that's if they make the final on I think it's the finals on a Thursday or on a Monday. But Andrew, I've seen it in other sports. I see it in soccer. Soccer used to have tons of friendlies between countries, and then they changed the format and they created something called the Nations League, and essentially replaced the friendlies and gave teams a little bit of an incentive in the sense of you could make by finishing first or second or third, you can make it or have a chance to make it into one of the things like the World Cup or the Euros. But players as a whole in football in Europe absolutely hate it because they say they play so many games right now that it is a strain on their bodies and a lot of players get injured. So I'm just hoping that we don't see that transpire here. But I'm excited to see it because you look at these players and they are just stacked. And yet, Andrew, you've been looking at the odds in some of these games, and we're going to talk about some of the top goal scorers, top point getters, teams to win the tournament. And you look at them, there's some great prices, but you look at some of the game lines, and like USA Finland is 5.5, the total. Canada and Sweden is 6, the total. You would just assume with so many offensive players in the top 9 on each team and throughout the rosters that we're going to see goals, especially if they take this tournament more so as let's not get injured, let's have fun, let's sort of score some goals, and let's try and win one for our country at the same time. So with that said, any rebuttal on this? I'm not saying it's a bad tournament. You got the best of the best, or most of the best, except for some of them that are already injured or chose not to play. But it's a short break from the NHL, and it should be some good viewing at the very least.
And I think it's cool, too, because, again, for some of the teams that are like the underdogs, like Finland, the coach that they have has coached a lot of these guys throughout their entire lives, whether it's been in like junior hockey, whether it's been for the World Junior team, whether it's been when they were younger at camps. Some of these guys have such familiarity with each other. versus, some of the teams that might not have ever played on the same line as a certain team. But you're right. I mean, like, especially you mentioned European football there, how, it can be such like a drag for them to be like, I got to stop my season to go play. But I think these guys have just been craving international competition for so long. That'll be really exciting for them. Like, I saw a funny interview, like Mitch Marner, William Nylander, and Austin Matthews, they all flew from Toronto to Montreal together. And it was kind of like, okay, I'll see you in a week and a half. Like, good luck, man. Like, I'm not going to talk to you guys, and, no friends on the ice, right? And so it's like, just like this, and in a snap of a fingers, you go from being teammates to enemies for the next 2 weeks. So I do think there's going to be one thing that I know we got to get to some of the new the formation and the format kind of changes from the NHL for this, but I was actually looking forward to chatting with you about this because you mentioned European soccer there, and I've been comparing match. You know how they call it match day one, right, with Champions League and that kind of stuff. Is that how you phrase it? Like, so I've been kind of thinking of it like that, Carm, for this, because I think that each match day is going to be different as far as what we can expect from each team. Like, I do think that the third and final game for each team will probably be the most tight checking and defensive game out of all of them. I think it actually reverses backwards. I think it's very easy to gain chemistry with your teammates offensively out the gate. Might be harder to gain chemistry defensively and get right into it. So I'm on that kind of side where I think we might see more defense towards the end of the games and actually see more open play at the start of the tournament.
I tend to agree with you, but I'm going to play a little devil's advocate with you here, Andrew. Let's say hypothetically, and you look at the games, and we're on the final match day or the final set of games, the third games for each team. There is no 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3 to get into the finals. It is just the top 2 teams, and we'll discuss that in a minute, that make it into the championship game. So it stands to reason as a possibility that let's say Canada is playing the U.S. The U.S. are sitting third, and they need to win the game in regulation time, 90 minutes, because if the game goes to overtime, it's a different point scoring format. In a tie game, you may see the USA pull their goalie in a tie
That's a
game
good
to
point.
avoid going to overtime. So that's where the totals come in. With that said, well, let's explain the format to you guys as far as like points go. I think Dan has a graphic for us that we can pop up there. I'm hoping we do. For the points scoring points.
For the tournament
So
format?
the
All right.
tournament format is what we're looking for. So the tournament format, if we don't have the graphic, that is fine. But the tournament format is each team plays 3 games. You're awarded 3 points for a win in regulation time. You're awarded 2 points for an OT win. You're awarded 1 point for an OT loss. And you get no points if you lose in regulation. So, Andrew, that's my point of it is a 3-point swing in the standings. If Canada and the US are playing, hypothetically, it's a third game. I'm not sure who the third games are in this one, but if it's Canada and US, if the US needs to leapfrog Canada, and they're 2 points back, they have to win the game in regulation. So they have to pull the goalie in any tied game, correct?
Yes, and I feel like that is something that I've kind of argued about a little bit in the NHL, and I've heard, multiple people mention the same thing, but I think the reason why they don't do that in the NHL is because if they gave 3 points to a team for a regulation victory, it would create less competition late in the season. The top teams would continuously stack up 3 points a night, and it would be so hard for other teams to catch up to them. But because we're playing in such a short tournament, making it to overtime, is going to be, yeah, sure, at least you got the loser point for making it to overtime, but making it to overtime and getting the win is still 2 points. So it's already kind of a setback getting that OT win. But, is you get that OT loss, it's only 1 point. So a reminder, every team will play each other, right? You're going to get points based on how you win. And Carm, I'm sure goals for and against will come into play if there are ties. I mean, that's just the only way you can really think about it. So each team playing each other once, 3 points regulation win, 2 points OT win, 1 point OT loss, no points with a loss in regulation, and the top 2 teams will play in a 1-game championship. Carm, and the overtime, right? 10 minutes of 3-on-3. They're trying to get rid of the shootout. Is that what I heard?
And then it's in the championship game, it is 5-on-5, I believe, as well too. So at least the championship game doesn't become a skills competition per se. And the final games, which will happen on this coming Monday, the 17th, will be Canada and Finland at 1 p.m. and then Sweden and USA at 8 p.m. And unlike, let's say, the final games of a group stage in European football, where there's 4 teams and they're played at the same time. This is also a made-for-TV tournament as well too, with ESPN and ABC dishing out the dough on this one, and of course Sportsnet north of the border as well too. But the Sweden and United States will know their fate and what they need heading into that 8 o'clock game, Andrew. So that 8 o'clock game, more than anything else, I think, is the one that could have some some weird stuff happening in the third period. Of course, that's where you have to look at you can look at the total and you speculate, which is all you can really do come that Monday after that 1 o'clock game is over. You can speculate on a team needing to pull the goalie in the third period or not. That may not happen if they're winning comfortably after 2 periods as well too. So it is something that is obviously dependent, and that's where in-game betting and having multiple outs is extremely important, because if you're in-game betting this tournament, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of opportunities to make money in that one. So Andrew, before we get into the first game, why don't we look at some, these are up at DraftKings. These are some pretty good props, I think, that we put together. They have a top goal scorer prop. So I listed the top 5 guys as far as goal scoring props go. So the top goal scorer of the tournament. Who stands out to you of the top 5, or have you looked further down the list? There seems to be a lot of cans on that list, except for one guy who's playing in Canada, but listed as USA, Mr. Austin Matthews.
For a team that I think has a ton of depth, we are seeing a lot of Canada there. No surprise to see Austin Matthews, one of the best pure goal scorers of this generation, being the top guy right now on the number 1 odds. But you know who I'm going to be firing on, Carm, and I think has a really good shot to win this bet for all of us, is Sam Reinhart at 10-1. A lot of people might look at this list and say, Braden Point and Sam Reinhart, like they're right next to McDavid and McKinnon for this and for the odds here. But when you look at it and you look at the way the lines have been constructed, so right now, based on John Cooper's lineups and the line combinations, he has Sam Reinhart on the number 1 line, right next to Connor McDavid and Mitch Marner. When you look at those 2 players, especially a player like Mitch Marner, he is known for being very unselfish. He is known for his playmaking ability. Mitch Marner is a guy that will set up his teammates. The unbelievable passes he makes during the regular season to Austin Matthews, to William Nylander, to all these great goal scorers. And he's going to be playing on a line with Connor McDavid and Sam Reinhart, right? And when you look at Sam Reinhart, he continuously has the green light to score. He's going to be in the bumper spot on the power play, which is typically a spot that whenever you're getting the puck, you're firing it on net. You're not really looking to pass it back and pass it around to anybody else. So he's a guy that will have that green light, as they say in basketball. He'll have that shooter's mentality. And one thing I'm thinking of here for this tournament, when I look at the second line that's been currently constructed by Coach John Cooper, is Right now, it's Mark Stone, Sidney Crosby, and Nathan MacKinnon. From the way I looked at it, if you compare that line to line one, and this is no offense to the line one guys, I would say that line two is more of a shutdown line than line one is. Crosby is a great 200-foot player. He's had to do a lot of it this year, as you and I both know, Carm, for the Pittsburgh Penguins. MacKinnon, he has no problem playing on both ends of the ice. And of course, we know Mark Stone, he's definitely comfortable being a 200-foot player as well. So I feel like that line could be a little more of a shutdown and 200-foot players. And you look at the top line as more of the goal-scoring lineup. So Sam Reinhart 10-1 really sticks out to me. And I know that people are going to probably pick either America or Canadian players for this. But one name that did stick out to me, and it's actually a Toronto Maple Leaf, someone that knows Austin Matthews very well. That's William Nylander at 20-1. He performs very well on big stages. In my opinion, he's been one of the best Maple Leaf players in the playoffs over the past few years. He loves representing his country. He's always done well for Team Sweden. I think him at 20-1 to carry the load for Team Sweden would be a pretty good bet as well. So what stood out to you as far as these bets are concerned?
Yeah, it's funny because you literally took the one's top goal scorer prop that I liked, which was Sam Reinhart, because obviously he's going to be on the line. He's on the line with Connor McDavid, and we see it with McDavid that McDavid likes to become the guy who finds someone, who picks up the assists. It's not always about goals with McDavid. So as long as Reinhart stays on that line, it's kind of like we saw what happened with Zach Hyman. You know, Zach Hyman all of a sudden became a guy who couldn't miss the net last year with the Edmonton Oilers because he was on a line with Connor McDavid. So plus, at 10-1, it's worth a flyer. You know what I mean? Like you guys don't have to go crazy and put 2, 3, 4% on it. Put a pizza size bet on some of these ones and see if they come in. It's not. I don't think it's a bad play at 10-1, Andrew. As far as like the goal scoring props go, and it's going to be top heavy as far as U.S. and Canadians in this tournament. So I do get like the Nylander one too. The tournament is set up that they're looking for Canada and U.S. to play in the finals. That's the optimum final. That's why they're both plus 160 to win this tournament. But as far as goal scorers go, 10-1. Man, Reinhart, Andrew, like his career has really just tailed off since he left the Buffalo Sabres. 57 goals last year, 31 goals already this season. It's amazing what a change in scenery can do when you leave the tundra and cold of Buffalo and you're on the beach in Florida and winning a cup. So Sam Reinhart, 10-1 for me. Andrew, let's look at top point scorers in this tournament. So the top point scorers obviously are a little different. This brings in the assists. And with this one, I have two that I like. And then one is the obvious favorite, which is McDavid plus 650. It's because it's plus 650 and not lower that I like it in this one because obviously he's on the PP one, power play one. He's on the first line. He's going to pick up a lot of points, I think, in this tournament. The one that stands out to me is Jack Eichel, 22-1 on Jack Eichel. I'm sorry, but this guy, I think he's a good player. Career is really, once again, taken off since leaving Buffalo and going to Vegas and winning a cup. Maybe there's something to be said about leaving Buffalo and winning a cup. But 22-1 on Jack Eichel. He's going to be on the power play one on that team. It just seems too enticing not to throw one of my pizza slices that does not have pineapple on it because pineapple does not belong on pizza. Dan Alexander, our Eagles-loving Super Bowl champion producer. 22-1, Jack Eichel. What do you think, Andrew?
I like it. I get it. And I see what you're doing, Carm. It kind of makes you feel better picking all these former Buffalo Sabres players that continue to play well. I mean, it's crazy to see these former Buffalo Sabre players that just absolutely go off, win Stanley Cups the second that they leave. hard to really go against that when I look at it. Looking at some of these awards here or looking at some of these guys on the list. Of course, you can look at the favorite being McDavid. We know the playmaker that he is, and I can't stress it enough. I think it just is so crucial that for some of these guys, it's their first time representing their country, for how hungry they are, and I think for a guy like McDavid, it can really help cement their legacy. And for a player like McKinnon, training every single summer with Sidney Crosby. And now he gets to play not just on the same team as him, but on the same line as him. He makes it very clear in every interview that he does that Sidney Crosby is his idol. Sidney Crosby is who he looked up to growing up, and now they get to play on the same line together. I find that pretty intriguing to look at. There were two that stood out to me, and these were actually both on American teams. Jack Hughes at 20-1 and Matthew Tkachuk at 25-1. Now, for me, when I look at Matthew Tkachuk, it kind of reminds me of the guy that will score all the dirty goals, that will be involved in a lot of plays. He'll be getting a ton of time. And based on some of the lines I've been seeing, some people think that they're going to end up going back to the original lineup where they had Matthew Tkachuk, Austin Matthews, and JT Miller out there together. So you got Matthew Tkachuk with two pure goal scorers. I've seen that line get jumbled around a few times, so I'm not sure if that will remain. But if you put Matthew Tkachuk setting up a guy like Austin Matthews and JT Miller, he's going to accumulate a ton of points off that. And we don't need goals from him. We just need assists. And of course, he's going to be out there in front of the net on the power play. And the thing is about this award is that power play time is going to be really important. And I think that some guys are going to be, maybe on the third line, but they're still going to be getting power play time. So, for example, Jack Hughes is a third line center for this team, but he's still going to be a very important player on the full power play. So I think he's someone worth looking at. 25-1 and 20-1. Shop around because you can get better odds. But the thing is, Carm, I think that some of these teams are going to have to win low-scoring games, and some of these teams are going to have to win higher-scoring games. And there's a lot of people saying about Canada's goaltending being the weakest, so one can only wonder if maybe, hey, they'll need 4 or 5 goals to win some games, whereas the team that has Hellebuck and Ottinger and Swayman will only need a few goals to win their games. And a lot of that goes into things as far as the highest point. I'll throw it back to you with this one. Here's one that could be a crazy long shot. I'm curious what you think about this one here, Carm, because I think this player is going to be involved so much. It's his first time wearing the Team Canada jersey at this stage as well. Cale Makar. He pretty much plays like a forward, but he's a defenseman. He's going to be the quarterback of the number 1 power play unit. He's going to be jumping into the rush with guys like Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid. You got to think that the offensive blue liners are going to be so important to this tournament. And as far as, Team USA is concerned, no Quinn Hughes is a huge loss for them. That's pretty much their equivalent of Cale Makar. For us to have a guy, and yes, I just said us, for Canada to have a guy to jump up the ice and play offense with the forwards, I think is huge. 25-1. Is that worth a sprinkle, Carm?
And again, Andrew, when you get to like those odds and it's kind of like when they say if someone offers you 10,000-1 on any bet, any type of bet, as ridiculous as it seems, you always take it because you're never going to get those types of odds. I just think this this tournament in the way it sets up is likely as far as goal scorers, as far as total points scores, like the one I talked about, like with Eichel and McDavid, is more geared towards the guys who are forwards. You wonder, because we obviously removed, you remove from a regular NHL type of game those third and fourth lines, guys who normally will pick up penalties against the number 1 and number 2 lines and put those power plays on the ice. How many power plays are we going to see in this tournament or in individual games? Are guys going to go out there and when you talk about like McKinnon and Crosby and you look at McDavid and Reinhart, these guys are going to be picking up penalties. You wouldn't think so. A lot of these guys are some of the most least penalized guys in the league, and they're on the ice together. So we're going to find out right away. I think Canada and Sweden tonight, how how passionate these guys are about playing this game. I just don't see these guys, even when it's Canada and US. The second game, I just don't see these guys throwing their bodies around and playing an ultra physical type game where we're going to see some penalties. There should be an over under on the number of fights in this tournament, Andrew, because I would take under 1.5. I think is safe. Under a half would probably be plus money. But who's going to fight? Who is going to fight in this tournament? I just don't see it.
I'll tell you, Carm, there's
Imagine we
going
see
to
a
be some
fight
greasy
tonight,
hits.
but what
There will be a few greasy
you think
hits,
so?
and there might not be a fight, but there's going to be some. Oh, yeah, I think there's going to be some hits that people are saying, holy crap, like this is supposed to be a tournament that's, you know, it's not an all-star game, but we didn't think we'd be seeing someone like Matthew Tkachuk was quoted saying, we're going to treat this like we're playing 7 game 7s. Like they're going to do anything that they
Yeah.
can to win this game. If they see Crosby coming down the ice, they're going to try and drill him. So it's very interesting to see how this works. And to be honest, I think that's one of the reasons why Drew Doughty was brought to Team Canada, because I think he brings a little bit of a physical presence. He might not be the fastest guy out there coming off his injury, but he brings that physical presence. But it's a really, really good point made by you about how few penalties we could see. But at the end of the day, though, pretty much all 4 lines for all 4 teams have so much talent that if we're going to see penalties, it's probably going to be tripping, hooking, maybe slashing, not going to see anything like boarding or roughing or that kind of stuff, but it might just be like the tripping. If I could make a bet which penalty call will we see the most this tournament, it would probably be tripping, because a guy is going so fast that, somebody stuck out their stick and they tripped. So it'd be very interesting to see how many power plays we do see, to your point. But I guess it just makes it more important for those power plays to matter, for them to add up. You might only get 1 or 2 power plays per game.
I'm going to go with the most called penalty is going to be the high stick, Andrew, because we have,
Okay.
listen, I love these guys, but we have some of the best actors out there where that stick just glances the side and these guys throw their head back. They've become soccer players on skates. I've never seen so much flopping in the NHL as I have this year. I miss those days where you got hit, you scooped up your teeth off the ice, you gave them to the trainer, and you put them in a glass of milk to preserve them, and said, "Okay, we'll push them back in at the in between periods or what have you." So we'll see how that goes. But Andrew, we disagree on what the most called penalty is, but that's not what the show is about. This is about who is going to win this tournament. And I know you are a Cole Harbor guy. You love your Nate McKinnon. You love your Sidney Crosby. So you're taking Canada. Is that correct?
I am. I am confidently and proudly taking Canada to win. Out of the bottom 2 teams, I think I would take Team Sweden, just because I think that despite some injuries, their goaltending is there. Yeah, I like Team Canada. And, I'll be very brief, Carm. John Cooper said the identity of his team is winners and gamers. And when I look at the 6 defensemen representing Team Canada, 5 of those players have won a Stanley Cup. When I look at the 6 defensemen for Team USA, 1 of those defensemen has won a Stanley Cup. Look at the goaltenders on USA. Hellebuck has great regular season numbers. The guy gets bounced every year in the playoffs. Jordan Binnington has won a Stanley Cup. So I think a lot of these guys have Stanley Cup experience. Go through the top 6 guys on Team USA. Tell me how many of them have even been to the second or third round in the postseason in the NHL. Brady Tkachuk has never even participated in the playoffs, let alone made the Stanley Cup. Some of these players, like Jack Hughes, have only won 1 or 2 rounds in their whole career. You go through the entire roster for Team Canada, many of these guys have either been to the Stanley Cup final and lost, or they've won a Stanley Cup. I want to remind people how Austin Matthews has played and come in clutch for his team in the playoffs. He has 1-round victory over his 9 years in the NHL. This isn't a regular season game anymore, Carm. This is the playoffs. Every single game is almost like a playoff game. So I'm basing all my thoughts on these games and these players off the playoffs, not the regular season. And according to what I'm looking at and just the pure data, the Canadian team has a bunch of winners on their team. USA is a bunch of guys that fold once the playoffs start.
Oh, I cannot believe you said that, Andrew. Guys that fold, come on, man. This is where we're going to disagree. I'm putting my patriotic leaf, my poppy, I'm putting it all to the side, Andrew. I'm taking the USA to win this tournament. I can't take Finland in this one. Their lineup is pretty much decimated. And Finland's a team that in these international tournaments always fare well. They always play extremely well, and they give Canada fits. And Canada has to play them on the final match day, as we call it, Monday at 1 p.m. And that's what makes this game tonight for Canada that much more important against Sweden, because then they've got the USA up next before playing that game against Finland. So we've seen Canadian teams falter before, Andrew. I'm taking the USA in this one. Listen, I like the goaltending for the US. I like how they set up. I'm a fan of the last 2 seasons of how Hellebuck has looked. And then if you need to switch it out, you've got Jake Onger, just as good. And then, of course, the 3 goalies that they carry on their roster, and Jeremy Swayman from the Bruins. Obviously, you look at Sweden, and Sweden is probably the one hurt most by injuries. Andrew, Urson was added to Team Sweden. We're going to talk about that game right now. Replacing Jacob Markstrom, who's obviously injured, Philippe Gustafsson, who's having a good season with Minnesota, and then Linus Ullmark, who's spent a lot of time in the press box because of his injury. So we'll see how he does as he's starting to come back. But a little bit of worrying on the goaltending as far as Sweden goes, Andrew. So why don't I throw it to you for this Sweden game, and let's break it down.
Carm, before we get to that, I just thought it'd be a good idea for just us to mention that we're going to be doing all kinds of plays, whether we're tweeting them out or with our clients at WagerTalk.com. But of course, 3, 4, 5% plays cost either $25 or $35. So Carmine and I have decided if any of you guys want to join us, we have individual packages available for just $59. So you guys can get every single play we release. There are 7 games in this tournament. You guys can get every single bet that we release for every single game. Sides, totals, props, team totals, first period plays, futures, whatever it is the 2 of us release. You guys can go to our homepages and sign up for the full season. I hope that nobody buys my individual plays. I hope you guys join me for the full season, full tournament at $59. If we have a 5% play, that's $35, guys. You're almost there. We're going to have $25 plays. You're just better off getting the full package for the full entire tournament. I'm going to have player props. I'm going to have sides, totals, team totals, all that good stuff. Same thing for Carmine. So you're better off taking a look at these packages, guys, jumping on board and joining us for the full 4 nations. Let's build our bankrolls for the NHL season. The NHL will be back in a week and a half. We're hoping to have bigger bankrolls because of international competition when we get back to the NHL season and we get back to regular PuckTime shows. So $59, guys, is the way to go. All right. Carmine and I have done our research. We know all the starting lineups. We know all the goalies. We've been reading reports. We're very prepared for this. $59, that is the way to go. All right, game 1 of the tournament tonight, Wednesday night, February 12th, Canada versus Sweden. Sweden has yet to name a goaltender, as the coach said. Hey, you guys can find out tomorrow night. So very interesting. He's playing those games. Team Canada has listed Jordan Binnington as their starting goaltender. Obviously, the most experience wearing the Team Canada logo on the front of his chest. But taking a look at this, it's interesting, Carm, because based on everything I've seen, the numbers have gone up, of course. Canada's price has gone up a little bit. We have seen some movement on the money line price, but we're now seeing minus 245. And I saw an opening total of 5.5. Some books are now showing 6.5 for this game. So it's gone up from 5.5 to 6.5 here with this game as far as the total is concerned. Minus 1.5 being plus 105, plus 1.5 being minus 125 for Team Sweden. Regulation minus 160, regulation for Sweden plus 295. Dan, I apologize. I will go back to those lineups. I think it's cool to take a look at it. Going back to the Team Canada lineups, taking a look at things here, guys. Sam Reinhart will be on the left side of Connor McDavid and Mitch Marner. Nathan MacKinnon up the middle right now, right next to Sidney Crosby and Mark Stone. It's been made clear that Crosby and MacKinnon will take turns being centered on that line. Brad Marchand, Braden Point, Seth Jarvis, Hagel, Sorelli, Konechny, and the defensive pairings, Taves, Makar, Morrissey, Parayko, Theodore, and Drew Doughty. So, guys, very interesting as far as your betting and prop betting is concerned to know about these lineups. We'll shout out dailyfaceoff.com for these rosters, for the lineups, as it's interesting to look to see how these have been constructed. As far as Sweden's lineup is concerned and the way it's looking for this game tonight, I think it's going to be very top heavy. I was reading an article that was from Daily Faceoff, and he said that we should call this team the donut team of the four nations. Plenty of substance on the edges, but a hole in the middle, Carm, on this team. Look at the talent around, with Forsberg and Nylander and Kempe and all these guys, but they're a little bit weak up the middle. Pettersson's not having the best season right now. Zibanejad certainly isn't having the best season right now. Eriksson Ek isn't having the best season, and Lindholm certainly hasn't been living up to expectations. But when you look on the wing at Lucas Raymond, at Jesper Bratt, Raquel, Forsberg, Kempe, those guys are solid. And then we look at the defensive pairings, with Erik Karlsson, with Ekholm, with Hedman, with Brodin, Gustav Forsling. One thing I noticed when I look at those defensive pairings, Carm, is they have a lot of veteran players on that team. That's what I'm seeing when I look at that team as far as their defensemen are concerned. But I do worry about them up the middle. I worry about them winning faceoffs, and I worry about them winning battles, because when I look at the roster, I look at Braden Point, Sidney Crosby, and MacKinnon playing center on one line, and then the top line, of course, with McDavid being a center. Those players, match up a bit better than Pettersson, Zibanejad, and Eriksson Ek. Having said all of that, I do have some props to look at, Carm, but I like the over, and I would tell people to shop around. You should be able to find, at least at the average right now, a flat 6. I like the goaltenders here. Don't get me wrong, and I think people are realizing how great the Swedish goaltenders can be if healthy, but I'm a big believer in chemistry not taking that long offensively to get used to. When you're playing with great players, it's not hard to get used to these players. Look at Martin Necas for the Colorado Avalanche, how quickly he developed chemistry with Nathan MacKinnon. If you're a good player, you develop chemistry with your teammates pretty instant. But the defense, the pace is going to be incredibly high in this one. Might take some time for these players to get used to defensively. So I think the first couple of games, we could see some goals here, guys, and then things might slow down a little bit here. But, Carm, we've seen some movement on the money line and the total. What are your thoughts on things overall, on some of the lineups that we just talked about here for both Canada and Sweden? Anything that you would have changed for what either of these rosters did with their lineups?
No, it pretty much Sweden's looks like it should. Obviously, I would rather have Markstrom in goal for this team, but we'll see what they decide. I was looking at some of the stuff for the morning skate. The coach from Sweden said he wasn't going to name his starter right away, but they did show Urson on the ice with I think it was with Allmark or whatever. I'm sure it'll likely be Allmark or Gustafson, one of those two. Urson's. I don't think Urson even makes it onto the ice in this tournament. It's going to be those two guys flipping in, and I think what we'll see is in game one and game two is for much of the teams. I think you're going to see different goalies. So if it's Binnington tonight for Team Canada, and he has been confirmed as the starter, then I think we see Canada's number two goalie go tomorrow. Was that Aiden Hill? So we'll see how that goes as far as the goaltending go. And as far as the game goes, the total went from it was sitting at 6, it is now at 6.5. It's still shaded a little bit to the under. If you expect a high scoring game, you know what I mean? And you're looking at Canada to win. They have those props where you can pick the game winner and the total. And Canada to win and over 6.5 is plus 165. Maybe that's a better alternative than laying, minus 240 if you like Canada tonight. Of course, they call it the Polish middle. Canada could win and the game could stay under the total, making that a losing wager where the minus 240. But I'm never going to lay 240, especially in game one of a tournament that I don't know what to expect as of yet. I'm just happy that for the sake of the people at the Bell Center tonight, they finally get to see some stars on the ice tonight at the Bell Center. Sorry, Andrew, I had to take a shot at your Montreal Canadiens. But with that said, that's the one prop I do like, and I think I'm going to put it up like as a free play. Canada win over 6.5 plus 165. Let's try and cash a plus money prop tonight. 5-2 gets us there. 4-3 gets us there. So those aren't bad props to take. 4-3 seems to be a popular score line at times in the NHL. So what are your thoughts? Canada and over 6.5 plus 165.
My first thought, Carm, was I love that price. I love that price. It's the name of the game, trying to find the best price possible, trying to find that plus money. What I've been trying to do all season with these team totals on PuckTime. So I like that one quite a bit. I do think there will be a lot of comments made about Team Canada's goalie if he does let in several goals. So despite who wins this game or how Canada wins this game, it'll be interesting to see the comments made regarding the goaltending. And I'm very curious, Carm, to see which teams will actually play multiple goalies this tournament. Like, as a Montreal Canadiens fan, I don't think Samuel Montembeault is going to get one start in this tournament. If Jordan Binnington wins tonight for Team Canada, but they win, let's say 5-4, he might lose his starting job to Aiden Hill, and then Aiden Hill never looks back. So it could be one of those things where you kind of, even if you get the win, it might not be good enough for the coach. They'll put somebody else in. Very curious to see. I bet you some teams might play the same goalie the entire tournament. All right, I have 3 props to get into, and then we'll close things out here. We'll get your thoughts on some props, Carmen, if you have any else to mention. If not, we'll close it out. The first one I wanted to look at, and I love this number. Absolutely love this number. Dan, if you have the ability to pull up the Canadian lines for me, again, I'd really appreciate that for this one here. Mark Stone to record a point at minus 115. I really, really, really like this bet here, guys. And this is, to me, is just pure line shopping. When you look at his line mates, Nathan MacKinnon to get a point is in the minus 200 range. Right now, I'm seeing Nathan MacKinnon to get a point is the heavy minus 200 price. When I look at Sidney Crosby to get a point, he's minus 165. But these players are playing on the same line as Mark Stone, and he's only minus 115. Obviously, he won't be out there on every single power play with these guys, and that's definitely a factor. But 5-on-5, to get one player on your line minus 200, the other player is minus 165, and the other guy is only minus 115. That's where I'm looking. I think you put Mark Stone with these two players, he's going to touch the puck. He's going to get a point. And if they get a goal on that line, I think he definitely has a part to do with it. Braden Point down there on the third line. Let's not forget about the energy that line is going to bring. Marchand, Point, and Seth Jarvis. That will be a very sneaky and sleeper of a line, I believe, for Team Canada. I'm going to take Braden Point to record over 2.5 shots on goal at plus 125. And just one prop here for Team Sweden from Team Sweden's roster here. Just one player and one player only. William Nylander. Dan, if you could pull up Sweden's, he's on the top line there for Team Sweden, and I understand he's going to be covered a lot. A lot of attention will be on him, but the fact of the matter is he is their best goal scorer. He is their best player, and the green light will be there for him to shoot as many pucks as he possibly can. So for William Nylander, you can get over 3.5 at minus 110. So I do like that one quite, or sorry, over 2.5 at minus 110. That's it for me, Carm. Anything else for you to add as far as this is concerned? And if not, we'll wrap it up.
We got to wrap it up. Two quick, very quick mentions. The 6-60 win, 4-2 on Saturday. I looked at some of the correct guesses. I yanked one of them out. David Tokarski, send a message to support at WagerTalk.com. And guys, we got a snowstorm here north of the border for the next couple of days. I will get your stuff out to all 4 of the winners. So just be a little patient. And if you're betting afternoon soccer, I've got a 5% play up in Champions League that goes at 3 p.m. You can get over at my page at WagerTalk, a perfect 5-0 on the season in 2025 with soccer plays this year. So let's see if we can make it 6-0 today. That's back to you, Andrew. What do you have up? And let's close it out. We're running late.
Yeah, guys, more props, more plays, very similar to those props that I mentioned. I have not done props all season long with the NHL, but I've been following them, and I love these player prop opportunities with this game and all these games on the world stage. So buy that package, $59 at my homepage, wt.buzz/am. Get every play I release for this tournament. I might only have 1 or 2 plays up for sale, but all access clients will get every single bet that I am personally taking myself. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time right here on Puck Time.